All right. And we are live. Just gonna wait a couple minutes as people kind of trickle in a little bit to see just a overview of the new notes we have here for the patch. I'm just gonna bring those up. Let me know if you guys can hear me and everything's all good. Made some changes to the audio setup, so it's always a little bit finicky sometimes. All right, awesome. Good to hear everything's sounding and looking smooth. So, do 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 do. Uh, patch changes should be popping up here, probably, hopefully, yeah. Um, so yeah, let's just do a recap of everything that we kind of implemented in this new patch, stuff that you might be able to, or you will be able to see in the tournament today. Yeah, let's just go through it line by line. So yeah. All right. So new stuff. First of all, we can now, when you right click when you're in battle, you can cancel your ability slash like target selection, all that good stuff. That was a requested feature. So why not? Let's put it in. It helps out some people, do things a little bit faster instead of messing around with the UI and moving your mouse around. Why not just right click? So there it is. Popular feature request adding an actual exit the game button. Not everyone likes to Alt F4, so now the game when you're on the main menu, you should just be able to click on that nice little X in the upper right hand corner if you are in full screen, and that should gracefully quit out. So good stuff. Next, what else we got? So if you were a very careful viewer during the last stream, you might have noticed a little bit of hitching up occasionally during the stream. Probably not if you were actually in battle, but we had like a slight like memory leak kind of thing going on. I think so. I think we patched it up now. So hopefully today we won't be seeing anything kind of funky. That only really happened I think it only really happened during like the final and the battle for third and fourth place last time. Just because how many battles I did without refreshing the client or anything like that. So you guys shouldn't be able to see that anymore. We shouldn't be able to see that anymore. So we should be all good here. There was a crash when closing the game from the character select screen. That should be all set now. So onto balance stuff. So in-game combat kind of things. So last time we were in the tournament, we were seeing a few like really big streaks of either hits or misses from the Rangers evasive stance. We've kind of tweaked some stuff on the back end, so you shouldn't be seeing too many streaks of hits or misses with that stance. But we're still kind of messing around with it, but I'm pretty sure that we've got it down. But we're always open to suggestions and stuff like that. So this is a process. We like to listen to you guys and see how you feel about certain changes and, all that good stuff. So, but there is some back end stuff that we did now. You won't see it in the description of the stance itself. Because technically it still does everything as it says, but there's some back end stuff that we did to kind of balance some stuff out. So yeah. So now the Ranger's Trap is more visible on the screen, because as of right now, we're using a lot of temporary assets for the characters themselves. So we kind of had to make that trap ourselves, and it wasn't like something that we just had. So there's no character animation for it, but now we made it a little bit more visible. It pops out of the background a little bit, so you should be able to see that trap a lot more. So you won't be accidentally stepping on it, or you'd be like, oh, where did that get placed? Who knows? So it should be more visible, but again, if it's not as visible as we would like it, we can fit some stuff in there at some point. So we did a couple things with character 6 to make them a little bit more viable. Not many people used it last tournament, then that could have been just because, oh, it's a new character and it takes a while for people to get used to it, and sometimes you want to do like the sure thing instead of the new exciting, potentially potentially awesome, potentially who knows types of characters. But now, since character 6 has been out for a little while, we've done a lot of testing and we gathered all you guys' feedback. We made some changes to them. So one of the issues was a concern with that character not being I'm not going to say tanky, but the survivability of that character was a little bit low, and so it didn't people didn't think that that character could get out like their big combos and make a more of a difference to the overall flow of the battle before the kick in the bucket, so to speak. So we increased the defensive stats, both the physical and the elemental defense for character 6 by 1. So that effectively gives them like 20% more health overall for the most part, factoring in all those resistances and such. Another thing that we did was we tweaked some damage values for character 6's offensive abilities. So some stuff might be a little bit more powerful, depending on which abilities you use, and I'll let you guys figure out which one those are. It's all in the descriptions, but there was some concern about their damage output not being enough, or in some places it was a little bit too much. So we tweaked some of those so that the character is more consistent overall. So there was in there's a move called Disruptor Blade, that is the melee elemental damage ability that character 6 has. Previously, that skill was described as having 50% chance of moving the target that you hit with that ability up in the turn order or pushing them back. We have removed the chance for a character to move up in the turn order and just left that at that 50% back. So it makes the move a lot more consistent. And I think there's also a little damage bonus if the target is adjacent to the totem, because we wanted to tie just about every ability into that totem. So this makes it a little bit more thematic and also makes it more consistent. So that's a little bit more of a valuable move for character 6's repertoire right now. The Chemist was a very considerably powerful and popular character in the last tournament. We saw them pretty much in almost every strategy. But so when you see something absolutely everywhere that everyone's using, you kind of take a little bit of a closer look at that character. There is a lot of different things we could have done to reduce the Chemist overall power level. Because they have a lot of interesting game-changing moves. But one thing that we did notice was that, especially in the late game, you can really lock down an opponent's strategy by just pumping out a lot of moves with that character, especially with the adrenaline rush and just how many moves that character can get out because of how fast that character is. So we did a very simple thing and just reduce their speed by 1. So that's it. So the character will have relatively less moves overall. But I mean, the character is still very, very fast, especially with the lurk skill. But for now, we just reduced their base speed by 1. So picking between your healing stance and your speed stance, so to speak, it's a little bit of a weightier decision. But that character it's still definitely possible to get off a lot of combos with the Chemist, but we just reduce their speed just by a little bit. We don't want to like radically change power levels immediately. So we'll see how this goes. And I think overall it's like a pretty decent solution for the time being. We also reduced the damage bonus of the Chemist Vigor Potion down to 75% instead of 100% bonus damage, just because we saw some really huge spikes and bursts and like one-shot KOs that utilize that ability. Not that we're not okay with one-shot KOs, but it just reduces it by a slight amount. So there is some, you can probably survive it for the most part. unless it's being used by a very powerful character on a very weak character. So that'll still work. It just won't be as viable when used against some tankier characters. Um, there was a little bit of confusion about delay turn and how that interacts with stances. So we just modified the description of that to definitely let you know that if you use delay turn, you will not be able to move. You will not be able to have a stance active. So it's a little bit of a trade off. So being able to modify the turn order like that with the delay turn is really powerful. And so we thought there should have been a little bit of a trade off with being able to use a stance or not. So for the record, if you use delay turn, and this is in the description now, so it's a little bit more obvious. If you use delay turn, you will not be able to pick a stance, and your current stance is like canceled. So yeah, working as intended, just a little bit more clear for everybody. And yeah, that's about it. Not a lot of huge changes, but we should see a difference in the overall effectiveness of Character 6 and with the Chemist. So, yeah, if you guys have any questions, I'll just be hanging around for a few minutes. And then if nobody has any questions or whatever, we're just going to go and set up some stuff in the background for the tournament a little bit. Got to update some links, do all that good stuff. And yeah, that's about it. So yeah, just let me know if you guys have any questions about some stuff. I'll just put on some music in the time being. All right, it looks like there are no questions for the time being. Oh, there we go. always always the last bit. Yeah, so the Rangers dodge right now. So it used to just be a flat percentage, depending on like 25% versus 35% at this point. Or that's how it used to be. It still is that, but basically what happens is that every time the ranger dodges or doesn't dodge, there's some stuff on the back end that we tweaked to kind of stack it in the favor in the opposite direction. So the more you dodge, like it still starts at that initial percentage, but if you say you dodge, your percentage to dodge again in a row technically goes down a little bit, and for vice versa. So it kind of just like rounds out those big streaks. It overall is exactly the percentage that it says on the tin, basically. But it kind of nudges you towards that a little bit sooner. So percentage still the same, but it just kind of smooths out that curve a little bit. And especially since in this game, like if we're gonna get into like probability kind of stuff, if you roll a die like like 10 times, you're not gonna get an equal distribution between 1 through 6. It's just it probability does that. So if you like roll it like 1,000 times, maybe you'll get that cool equal distribution between 1 through 6. But in a game like Steamhounds, we don't, you're not gonna have a chance to dodge like 1,000 times. So it like having that little bit of nudge in a certain direction helps out like immensely, in the short term. So that's kind of why we did what we did. But yeah, so that's basically how it works on the back end. pros and cons of RNG in Steamhounds more generally. Yeah, that's a big kind of question, and it has to do a lot with RNG in turn-based games in general. So there's a couple of different ways to look at it. So in any turn-based strategy kind of thing, you have like two kind of extremes. You have your like entirely what we're gonna call like deterministic type stuff, which is there is no RNG. And the game is the way it is every single time. So on that side of like turn-based like strategy type games, you have stuff like chess, which is same exact thing every single time. And what makes chess exciting is there are like I don't know, like billions, trillions, whatever, quadrillions, different combinations of how the game could technically play out. So people are still, the game has been played for a very, really long time. But even today, people are getting into situations that they've never seen before in the overall layout of a board. So that's where that kind of excitement can come from. On the other side is higher probability type games. So like there are plenty of games today, like a lot of collectible and like trading card games and stuff like that, where RNG is inherently built in to the system, and the fun that you can see in that is basically working with the understanding that there will be some randomness in the game, and being able to use that, one, to your advantage, or two, minimizing the effects of that in the most efficient way possible. So there's fun on both sides to be had. But what we're looking at is like, okay, how much RNG do we include in a game that is turn-based? And every one of those decisions has to be made on purpose. On purpose, basically. There has to be a reasoning behind it. So basically, the reason that we sometimes include RNG, and you see that a little bit in the game right now, mostly that pops up with the Ranger's evasive stance, but you also kind of see that occasionally in stuff like damage ranges and such. So like some move could do like 13 to 16 damage. And that's in that number, 13, 14, 15, or 16, is randomly chosen between those values. And the reason why every time we have that kind of thing is basically, especially for the Ranger's evasive stance, is a kind of like push your luck type mechanic, which can definitely be really engaging. And basically what I mean by push your luck is that like, with that Ranger's evasive stance, like your odds are it will like technically, since if you're in the front row, you'll dodge like 35% of the time. So if you're looking at that over a long period of time, that kind of equates to what, 35% damage reduction. But in the short term, if you're not getting hit a ton of times, that could be higher or lower depending on that initial RNG. So you might dodge a couple times in a row, and then you get to take your turn again, and then everything gets reset. And that's exciting. So there's different ways to do that, but you basically want to introduce RNG that can be engaging and exciting, but doesn't feel like it's taking a player's agency away. So if you have like a certain strategy that you're trying to do, like you should understand that you're working within the bounds of the RNG, but you can still have, like, if you plan accordingly, you can have a really good chance at executing a strategy. But the goal is, with any kind of RNG, is to not make one strategy the most dominant thing, and it always works the same way exactly every single time. And because eventually with games like that, you're going to get people who are going to number crunch the heck out of it. And then eventually you can, you just go by like a script, essentially. And then you can just do the same thing every single time and all that kind of stuff. So having a little bit of RNG is not necessarily a bad thing. It can help out a lot with that type of stuff. So in regards to like turn-based RPGs, you see that in damage ranges and like dodge percent chances and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of games that do have RNG in it. It's the only thing that we have to be careful about is that since this is a competitive like multiplayer kind of thing, it's not just you against the computer, it's you against another real person. So you want to make sure that either like winning or losing, it feels like you should have done that. Like technically the person with the who picked the best characters for the situation and has the best strategy should win, like most of the time, almost all the time, unless something really crazy happens. And we do want to have that opportunity to have like that cool thing that like, oh man, like this thing happened and just about like lined up in a way that allowed me to like eke out a win. But it feels good on both sides. Like for the person who lost, they saw something interesting and cool for the first time, and like they knew that they should have won, but like it's just by their understanding of the RNG that it just so lined up that the other person won. But that's why we have stuff like best out of 3 and stuff like that, so that even if the person like randomly gets like a really weird win, which doesn't happen very often, you know, the more like the better player, the person with a better strategy will come out on top. So yeah, that's a really long-winded way of saying that there are pros and cons of RNG in games and Steamhounds, but every time we add RNG to the game or there is RNG in the game, we do it on purpose, and it has its own purpose. So yeah. All right, we have a couple more minutes before I'm gonna have to do some stuff on the back end. We are gonna start at 2 o'clock, or at least Eastern time, so that's about like what 7 minutes from now. So we will do that pretty soon. But I'm just gonna hang around the chat for another couple minutes until that time. So depending on the number of people we have in the tournament today, we might see a slightly different bracket format. I don't know. We're still, it's always up to the last minute when someone decides to decides to join, and we want to have those people in. We want to have people be able to join last minute because it's fine. It doesn't take that much on our end in order to set up someone new. But generally, just like to peek behind the curtain a little bit, we have a few options that we have set up with our current bot right now that's in Discord that sets up the tournaments. We have like kind of like a round robin type thing where everybody fights everybody, and then whoever has like the best record at the end of that like wins the tournament. Or we have what we had last week, which was like a more like knockout bracket type thing. And both are good. It just depends on the number of people and like the time frame that we want to like have the tournament go on. So generally we like to see the tournament pretty much, unless we can't help it, be less than 3 hours. I think last time we got done with the entire thing within 2 hours, about give or take some initial setup kind of time. So that was pretty good. That felt good. So yeah. And there's just one other thing. As we're going forward with these tournaments, depending on the interest of certain participants, we could change the times of when the tournament starts to help out some people who like maybe on like the west coast of the US or something like that, or if we have more people like in Eastern Europe and all that kind of stuff, or in those types of countries, we can move stuff around. It's really, since it's on a weekend, and the current situation being what it is, it's no big deal for most of us. So if you want to bring in some friends, and they might not be able to make it at a certain time, like let us know. like we always really like to see new people come in, and if like the time zone is a problem, like the start time, just seriously let us know. We're super down to earth. So just contact us if in the Discord. You can just always drop us a line in one of the tournament chats, or if you're more comfortable like doing a DM, like totally just drop one of us a line, either myself, Jason, or Paul. Just let us know, and then we can figure something out, basically. So it is 1:56 at my time, so we're gonna start the tournament in about 4 or 5 minutes. So I'm just gonna go back. I'm just gonna do some stuff, and I'll be right back. All right, talk to you guys in a little bit.